Good evening and welcome back to another episode of Please Call Me Crazy, brought to you by Free People Radio and now powered by TireGet.com. That's TireGet.com. You have to buy tires from somebody. You might as well buy them from us and help fund the movement, help support the movement. We believe in the freedom of movement, and that's exactly what the establishment wants to take from you now. I am your host, Royce White, here in the belly of the beast, Minneapolis, Minnesota, with another episode number 60. Let me check. I'm on the road from city to city, so just bear with me a moment while I make sure here. Episode number 67. Episode number 67, fast approaching 100, fast approaching 1 million downloads on the audio platforms. You can find the podcast on Apple, Amazon, Google Play, and Spotify. We are also on Rumble. We are also on Band.video. I believe we're going to be having the podcast mirrored on warroom.org. I believe that's the War Room's official website where we're going to be mirroring the podcast as well. We want to give a special shout out and thank you to the entire War Room posse. Grace Chong, Maureen Bannon, and the great Steve Bannon for continuing to stream the podcast live every evening on War Room's Getter page, getting big numbers there, 25, 30,000 people an evening. So that's great. We really appreciate that exposure and that platform. We want to thank the entire War Room audience, obviously. We are gridlocked in a war for the future of this country, and your continued support and your steadfast um, patriotism is inspirational to say the least. I can't tell you how many times I go places and see people and meet people who have either watched me or heard me on War Room and say how much they appreciate the work that I'm able to do through War Room and the work that War Room has continued to do over the years. Also want to thank Jason Whitlock and the entire Fearless audience, the entire Fearless Army, for his continued support. And we look to have him back on the podcast here in a few weeks. We have a lot of things coming. A lot of things coming. I hear after my first weekend at the Big Three, this past Saturday, we played Sunday actually, but this past weekend, I hear that our good friend and an American icon, Ice Cube, is going scorched earth on a podcast tour to talk about the gatekeepers of our society, which he's probably very, very familiar with, intimately familiar with, having spent so much time in the music business and in Hollywood and now the broader entertainment world, in the world of sports and professional sports as well, arenas and so on and so forth, live tours, how the game goes. Happy to hear Ice Cube's back on the scene politically. He's taking a more aggressive approach to the people and the obstacles that are standing in his way from really trying to live out the American dream. Many people, and we'll get to that in a moment. But in light of Ice Cube's public statement that he's going scorched earth, I think that we're set to have Ice Cube on the podcast here very shortly. I know a lot of people saw that video and messaged me and said you got to have Ice Cube on, and of course we would love to. Hopefully the time permits, and if need be, um, we'll get a mobile podcast set up happening so that me and Cube can get it done on the weekend. But we would love to be able to Skype Cube in during the week and stay on our schedule, or if the schedule really permits, we would love to be able to have Cube come in at some time when he's in Minnesota and have him in studio. We'll try and get that set up as well, or any combination of the two. Ice Cube's a very busy man. I mean, he tours all year long. His music career was so impactful to the rap industry and to music in general, that he's still able to tour around the country and around the world, doing his music from his catalog. So, and then on top of all of the movie stuff that he's involved with, and the hard work and countless hours he puts into the Big Three and making sure that this thing is running. It's running quite well, I might add, and it has the potential. And I want to say this to start. What Cube understands and what Cube alluded to in his video was that a lot of America's political future hedges upon the black vote. It hedges upon the mentality, the understanding, the political awareness of the black citizen. Reason being is because so much of the narrative, so much of the agenda, so much of the legislation, so much of the policy So much of the propaganda has been waged on the black citizen. And the electoral process is what it is. Like I've said many times before, any of you Republicans out there that don't understand the significance of the black vote, you go back and you look at that Georgia runoff. You go back and you look at losing the majority control of the Senate by a swing state in a race that came down to what they say was 30,000 votes. Now we can all talk about the lack of security or integrity in the elections until the cows come home, and I'm happy to talk about that. In fact, I think that's probably the most pertinent issue in our society. If we don't have fair elections, we certainly don't have a democracy, but we really don't even have a country. We have a sort of tyrannical banana republic run by a few elites, a few gatekeepers, like Ice Cube was alluding to. But nonetheless, even if the elections aren't secure and the elections are stolen or rigged, um, which there's tons and tons of evidence that the elections were neither secure in 2020, 2022, or nor have they ever really been so secure in American history, certainly after World War II, and certainly since the CIA stood up and let its balls hang out and drag around on the floor. The CIA meddles in people's elections all over the world. There's no reason to believe that other countries' intelligence communities can't meddle in our elections. And there's no real reason to believe that the scope of election tampering is bound or constrained to governments or government agencies. Certainly independent people out there in the global community, corporate and otherwise, could also affect the elections as well. We saw that with Facebook, obviously, right? And Facebook is certainly through their hand in with the Democratic apparatus because, well, it's advantageous for them to do so. They're all hell bent on one common goal, and that's to have dopamine and technology run our society. So, um, the elections aren't, the elections aren't secure. We all know the elections aren't secure. It's only like since yesterday that Democrats started to shill for the integrity of elections. And it's just one of many things that your average Democrat who was traditionally anti-establishment and anti-corporate now unabashedly and shamelessly embarrasses themselves by doing in the public square, mainly on social media, which, hey, in an echo chamber where everybody agrees with you, I guess there is no shame. And we definitely see no shortage of a lack of shame in our society today. But the elections aren't secure. However, to Ice Cube's credit and to everybody else's credit who's still trying to, who's trying, um, not only do the results of an election matter, but the spirit of the election matters. And whether or not people feel satisfied with the outcome of elections, whether they believe in the outcome of elections in the most general sense, or if they feel cheated in the outcome of the election. And by and large, not only does the black community accept that a place like Atlanta would vote Democrat, the entire world, the entire country, and thus the entire world sort of believes that a place like Atlanta would vote Democrat. At least there's no real spirit of resistance against such a thing. I mean, let's say for argument's sake that Atlanta is being tampered with, or places like Atlanta all across the country. Let's say the huge blue cities are being legitimately tampered with in terms of the results. Who believes it? The people there don't believe it. And the reason why the people there don't believe it is because the elections are not driven by which policies politicians act upon, sign on, agree to, deny, whatever the case may be. Elections and the results of elections are audited. They are they are um, they are audited. They are adjudicated by the spirit of the people, right? And whether or not Democrats ever deliver on anything they promise Black people all across this country, the narrative is strong enough, clearly. The brainwashing is strong enough. The propaganda is strong enough to keep Black people loyal to the Democrat cause, or the Democrat platform, as they like to call it. The platform. I hate to use the word platform. It's just there's these few buzzwords that really start to trigger me. from the outset, just because there's just a certain type of person who uses them and says them in the woke ideology, and it's you could see it and hear it a mile off. But anyway, um, the spirit of elections matter. I mean, they really do. The spirit of our elections matter. And so when a guy like Ice Cube goes in front of the public and risks his career, risks his standing, risks his empire. I mean, I don't even want to say risks everything that he's built. When a guy like that goes and risks everything that he's built to make a very, very sane, logical, and reasonable proposal, you got yourself a hero, right? I mean, you got yourself a real player, and that's what the contract with Black America was. And as Ice Cube alluded to in his video that he posted on Twitter, I retweeted it if you want to go and reference it. He said ever since he brought the contract with Black America, he's been treated differently. He's felt, he's seen, he's heard. These gatekeepers try to derail him. And what was the contract with Black America? The contract with Black America was simply, let's go to both parties and start to broker a deal, a new deal, let's call it a new deal for what either party is going to get for our vote. And again, this draws right upon the narrative. For so long, Black people have just voted Democrat by default, in large part, or at least that's what the numbers say, or at least that's what people believe. And as such, the Democrats have failed for a long time in delivering anything that they say they'll deliver, now culminating in one of the most, but one of the one of the biggest betrayals in maybe in American history in terms of that unspoken agreement. And you can reference, and it's not just me saying this. It's not just right wing conservatives, right wing conspiracy theorists, and extremists saying this. You can go reference the video clip or the speech with Harry Belafonte, Hillary Clinton, and Barack Obama all sitting on stage together, and Harry Belafonte, who is by all means a stalwart of left wing politics, an icon, a cultural icon for Black woke left wing politics. He goes right up on stage and says in front of the entire auditorium and anybody watching, I don't know if there's anything left to salvage of the Democrat Party. And this was when Barack Obama didn't have a gray hair on his head. I mean, I think this was in his first run for president. So, I mean, if Harry Belafonte is saying the Democrat Party is all but washed, I think it's fair to say that Ice Cube is completely justified in posing the question. What are we getting? What are Black people going to get out of their vote? It's something all American people should ask. It's something all demographics. It's something all of the interested parties of working class, everyday, average American citizens should start to question and band together and formulate some type of plan of action to to pose this question before their elected officials or the people who run for office. So I completely respect Ice Cube for doing that, and I respect that he's going to take some arrows. He took his arrows, and he's not going to take them lying down. And all of you should support him. You can support by watching the Big Three. You can support by tuning in. You go to big3.com, buy some merchandise. I'm gonna make sure they get a jersey, a Royce White jersey, up on that site, so we can sell Royce White jerseys to the MAGA community. If you need a sports figure to follow out there, because so many of them have gone woke and LGBTQist, surely buy my jersey. We'll make it fun. We'll put something special on it, Godspeed or something like that. Maybe I'll be Mr. Godspeed. I don't know. We'll have fun with it. We'll have fun with it. But yes, support the Big Three. Follow the Big Three. Right now, I'm in the process of working on getting a Big Three podcast started so that we can have a conversation about culture and sports that's not bound by woke ideology. That's just more like the barbershop. I mean, Cube is one of Cube's greatest Hollywood works is the barbershop series. And first it was Friday, and well, you may not know these movies. I know there's a lot of conservatives, white middle-aged conservatives out there watching the podcast, and we love your viewership and listenership and support. So some of these Black cultural items you may have missed, but Friday was a movie that really did a great job of encapsulating a very real part of the black identity and culture in America. And people may not have liked it, or they may have said, "Hey, that's not all of Black America." And certainly, it's not all of Black America. And certainly, there are moments in time and in history where Hollywood failed to fund um, Black writers, movie directors that wanted to highlight or show a more positive version of Black America. And so, some of the criticism, which I think is uh, unfair criticism of a guy like Ice Cube, is look what a movie like Friday perpetuated, right? Perpetuated this sort of, lazy get high culture and, gangs and violence and so what. But really, when you take a look at the movie, there are great cultural wisdoms that we wish the black community would have taken to. And I think the whole premise of the movie in Friday, if you're unfamiliar with it, is that uh Craig's dad, Ice Cube, plays the character Craig in the movie, and the movie starts off with Craig being in this sort of, development transition stage of his life. He's right around that college age, isn't in school. His younger sister's actually in school at the time, and his best friend is a pothead, right? And he sells marijuana part time, and that was Chris Tucker. And Chris Tucker, nicknamed Smokey because he smokes a lot of weed, and he's gotten to a little bit of a hole with a local drug dealer, and now he decides to get Craig smoking weed, a little bit of peer pressure. And Craig doesn't really smoke weed. He's never really smoked weed. Lived in the neighborhood, very familiar with all of the neighborhood, you know, lifestyle, with all of the neighborhood norms. But he himself has never really smoked weed. Testament to his character's character in the movie. But he was peer pressured, and I can't say I haven't been there before. I smoked marijuana one time, gave me my first real full blown panic attack. I was fortunate and blessed by God to have that happen because I would never touch drugs again of any sort. At least not street drugs until I was introduced to Xanax, and then I realized that Xanax is just as, if not more dangerous than any street drug you could probably acquire, with the exception of real hard narcotics like meth and coke and heroin. But aside from those three, or aside from that class of drug, benzodiazepines are right up there, which is something to be said for big pharma and the scam that's going on in the narrative around drugs themselves. Nonetheless, Ice Cube gets peer pressure to smoking some weed, and then the drug dealer that whose marijuana it is, right? That this his best friend Chris Tucker, Smokey, is taking on consignment, comes asking for his money. Chris Tucker doesn't have it, obviously, because he smoked up the marijuana he's supposed to be selling. And he sends a couple of guys to either scare these two or kill them, ipso facto. What's the difference? Shots get fired, shots get fired. People think they're a good shot. Usually they're not as good as they really think, especially with automatic weapons. Anyway, the whole point of the movie and the real um, wise message in the movie comes from his father. And it's a testament of the narrative around black homes and how black people are portrayed in Hollywood or the mainstream media, that the basis of this story is a young man who actually comes from a two-parent home. And I've never talked to Ice Cube about the movie and the thinking, but I'm sure he has talked about it, and I'm sure you can go find that. And I'm sure maybe some of what I'm saying has nothing to do with how he went about writing the movie or why he wanted to. Um, but I'm just saying from my vantage point, looking back on the movie and how impactful it was on my life. Here you got a young black man who comes from a two-parent home. Dad works, mom works just to make ends meet. He has a job. He gets fired from a job. Okay. And in getting fired from a job, he finds himself hanging out with his friend who's just around the neighborhood smoking weed, and they get in a little bit of trouble. But his father always told him, you have to have a job. If you're gonna live in my house, you have to work. And number two, don't carry a gun around just to be a punk, right? Um, in my day, and this is his dad talking, in my day, we settled disputes with our fists. And the culminating scene in Friday, the first Friday, there ended up being three of them, but the culminating scene in the first Friday was Ice Cube coming to the defense of a young woman who gets smacked out there on the street. by a character, Debo. It's funny, everybody talks about a guy, in black culture, we talk about Debo. Debo is like an iconic character that every neighborhood really has. Bigger guy, tough, good fighting, beat up a bunch of people just for nothing sometimes. Just a neighborhood bully, you know what I mean? And so Debo is the neighborhood bully. And this evening in the movie, everybody's out on the street after gunshots were rang out, and a young lady that Ice Cube is fond of comes and confronts Debo because her younger sister, maybe her older sister in the movie, I'm not quite sure, older sister Felicia, right, which is where the new school saying "Bye Felicia" comes from this movie. I'm just trying to show you how impactful this movie was. The whole "Bye Felicia" phenomenon culturally, that's more recent, comes from Ice Cube saying bye to Felicia on the stoop when she asked to borrow his car, or she asked to borrow I think yeah, she asked to borrow his car or some money. Felicia's a crackhead. Felicia's a neighborhood crackhead. She's doing crack. Debo, the neighborhood bully and the neighborhood crackhead, they got a little thing going on. Okay, they're actually into a little intimate relationship. And one night, I guess, funny how the whole story unfolds. Debo forces Chris Tucker to help him in a breaking and entering, which Chris Tucker doesn't want to do, but he feels pressed to do it because he don't want to get beat up by Debo. And so they break into this guy's house, who's neighbors to Ice Cube, and they take a little bit of cash out of it. And because Chris Tucker needs the cash, because he's in too deep with the drug dealer. Now the drug dealer tells him, "You got till 10 p.m. to give me my money, or I'm coming to kill you and your homeboy." He goes back to get the money that they stole earlier from the house from Debo, who's asleep at Felicia's house. Felicia's the sister of the girl played by Nia Long, who Ice Cube is fond of. Anyway, long story short, in the culminating scene, Debo and Ice Cube get into a confrontation because Debo slaps Nia Long for questioning him about putting his hands on her sister, and her sister got a big black eye. Debo doesn't deny it. He's like, "Hey, I slapped her because she went through my pants." He's thinking that she's the one who stole the money because she's a crackhead and drug addicts steal money to get high. So he's thinking she stole the money, but really Chris Tucker snuck into the room and took the money out of his pants. And so again, at the end, um, Ice Cube steps up to Debo and says, um, "Don't put your hands on a female, right?" And Debo, puffs back up, steps back up, and says, "What you gonna do about it, right?" And then he proceeds to push Ice Cube. Craig is his character in the movie. Proceeds to push him. Some sort of thing unfolds. I remember off the top of my head, but anyway, Ice Cube has been carrying a gun because the neighborhood's getting crazy, and this sort of encapsulates the transition of black communities from the 80s to the 90s and into the 90s. Shit was getting crazy out there. I grew up in that era as a young kid, but I remember things changing. And I remember my parents and my uncles and my grandfather and people like that talking about this type of change. How, yeah, the 80s had gun violence and there was drug deals and there were always guns around, but you went from revolvers to automatic weapons to everybody had a gun to everybody settled every dispute with a gun, you know, with the snap of a fingers. So Chris, Ice Cube's carrying this gun, and all the way back to the beginning of the movie, the scene, this whole movie opens up with the scene where he's got his gun in his room, and his dad comes in, and his dad sees the gun, and he goes, "What do you need that for?" And Ice Cube's like, "You know how the neighborhood is, man. It's crazy out here." And his dad is like, "No, no, son. Things aren't like that. That's not the way things are. Y'all are just being, you know, sissies. Y'all are being punks. That's all it is." Everything a man needs is right here, right? And he puts up his fist and he tells him, "Put your fists up, you win some, you lose some, but you live to fight another day." I mean, that's an iconic black movie scene, iconic black cinema. You win some, you lose some, but you live. You live to fight another day. Um, And so you fast forward all the way to the climactic scene of the movie, and Ice Cube is tempted to pull the gun because Debo's so much bigger than him. So that, notorious undefeated record in fighting in the neighborhood, and he pulls the gun on him. And at that moment, Ice Cube's dad just happens to be out there on the street at the time, and he tells him, and his mom's out there, his sister's out there, everybody's out there, and his dad tells him again, "Put the gun down, son. Put the gun down. Put the gun down. Put the gun down." Right? Um, and he puts the gun down, and he proceeds to fight Debo. And the fight's going both ways. He swings, he swings. Debo's laughing. He's like, "I can't believe this little punk is actually going to try and fight me." And eventually, he slams Ice Cube on the hood of the car, puts him in a sleeper choke, puts Ice Cube to sleep, drags him off of the car, lays him on the ground. The whole neighborhood's out there. He turns the rest of the neighborhood with this kind of, victorious sort of proclamation. Who else wants some of Debo, right? Who else wants some, right? This little punk challenged me and knocked you out like I knocked him out. Who else wants some of me? Um, Little does he know, Ice Cube is still conscious and is now regaining consciousness. And Ice Cube picks up a brick from the lawn right there, and he throws it, and he hits Debo square in the face. And that gives him the upper hand to eventually win the fight. Movie over. Gets the girl, and everybody lives happily ever after until the sequel, in which case Debo breaks out of jail. Ice Cube has to run to the neighborhood with one of his relatives to escape. That's a whole nother movie. I won't go into it. But the point I'm making is that Ice Cube, when you really look back at it, has always been on the cutting edge of trying to tell black people a narrative that is much wiser, much more sophisticated, much more an embodiment of well being, as the great Professor Penn would say, a much more an embodiment of well being than he's ever been really given credit for. Right. And even the great Jason Whitlock, who I love, I think Jason Whitlock is very critical of NWA and what effect rap music has had on the black community. And nobody could deny that or argue that. I think that's part of the real criticism around Ja Moran is not necessarily that he had a gun, which is completely legal, but um, there's a big difference between Lauren Boebert or maybe Marjorie Taylor Greene, who's a sellout, by the way. Marjorie is off the list for anybody who didn't quite know where I stand on that whole deal. Marjorie's fucking out for sure. Done, out. Okay. But anyway, a lot of the black people in America used some of the conservative Christmas cards and whatnot, where certain elected officials showed their family with their rifles and saying, "Hey, look, these guys are advertising guns and the Second Amendment, and nobody really says anything about that." There's a difference. Let me be clear about this. There's a big difference in taking a picture with your family saying we have the right to bear arms as citizens in a jovial sort of holiday expression and riding around in a car with music playing in the background that explicitly sort of lays out how one is going to improperly, inappropriately, maliciously, violently, and illegally use a firearm. There's a very big difference in that. And for all my black commentators out there who don't understand this difference, please feel free to reach out to me. I'll help you out with that. Okay, so it's not that Ja Moran had a gun, because every citizen should have the right to bear arms. In fact, I think the gun laws in some of these states are too strict, well, far too strict. In fact, I think we go so far as to say the gun laws across the country are leaning towards being more strict than they should be. So it's not that he had a gun, but brandishing a weapon to hip hop music that often glorifies the improper use of firearms is quite certainly means for condemnation. Now, whether or not the NBA should stick their nose in that and fine him on the basis of how it makes the brand look from a corporate standpoint, well, that's a different consideration altogether. And you don't need me to sort of illustrate how the NBA is a they're a violator of sacred honor and national honor and even logical consistency in so many ways. Why would we expect them to have any coherence in the way they adjudicate matters when it comes to their players or anything else, right? I mean, why we would even look to the NBA to have to be any symbol, any beacon, any type of compass for morality and ethics when it comes to corporate relations or workers' rights or anything else is beyond me. You're living in a fucking fantasy world if you think that they have any any type of footing to be any type of logical, insane, moral adjudicator. You're fucking out of your rabbit fucking mind. Okay. They don't. I mean, Adam Silver's as fucking corrupt as the day is long. And anything they do in the John Morant case is in most part just to appease whatever they think is the most um, to appease whatever they think is the most significant social wind. Right. That's not what leadership's about. And again, to go back to Ice Cube, right? I mean, you got a guy who, by all metrics, was a part of the inception of gangster rap. But as he evolved, he became a voice of reason. And I brought up his first movie to bring you to his second movie, which is another, an iconic piece of American black American history and cinema, regardless, but certainly black cinema, is Barbershop, right? And it's funny that he was the first one to really bring the barbershop culture, which is so prominent in Black America, to the big screen. And it was such a well done movie. You really know the well done movies, and you really know Ice Cube has done well because um, certain movies they play on network television over and over and over. Right, Ice Cube is the benefactor of many of those movies. Now there might be business dealings in the background that also help some of those help shape which movies are chosen for that type of viewership. But certainly, Ice Cube is a guy who has been involved in many movies that they love to show on TV over and over again. And I would agree that those movies are good. They're solid movies. I mean, they have a great replay value. Look at movies like Barbershop, right? You could look at a movie like Are We There Yet? Those were a great set of films, more family oriented. You look at a movie like State of the Union, Triple X, when Ice Cube played Triple X in the sequel, State of the Union. That's another movie. All About the Benjamins was a great movie as well. Uh, you know, Goes unheralded, but a very very good movie, a very very solid movie to say the least. And certainly even more recently with movies such as Ride Along, and then he had the movie where he fought the teacher. He was supposed to fight the teacher at the end of the school day and whatnot. As you can tell, I'm an Ice Cube fan, but really I'm a movie buff, right? I spent a lot of time in my life watching movies. It's something I can really thank my grandparents for, my grandmother and my grandfather. My grandmother even more so when I was young, and my mom would have to work on Saturdays and into the evening. I would spend a lot of time with my grandmother, and she was the one who would take me to my youth sports activities when I was younger. Hey, Grandma, love you. And After those sports activities, we'd often find ourselves at the movie theater. And you know, Life imitates art. Art imitates life, and then life imitates art. And our movies in Hollywood have had a huge impact on our culture. Um, some ways positively, some ways horribly. And so again, it just goes to show you how impactful a guy like Ice Cube really is. And to bring the barbershop culture to the big screen was significant. And it's ironic. It's ironic that the barbershops around Black America, which, when you say the barbershops is kind of like a way to sort of illustrate the black discussion. I mean, really, it's become Black Twitter. The barbershop has now become Black Twitter. So that's kind of where it is now. But there are still barbershops, and those barbershop talks still happen. But the barbershops and the hair salons were where the black community found themselves congregated to talk about any number of issues. The church is a little bit different because in church things are more constrained to conversation about faith, although community issues did often seep in there as well. But the barbershop is where the debates and the shit really got ironed out, really got hashed out. And if you could come out on top of some of those barbershop discussions, I mean, you were that guy. You were that guy, and I've seen it. And even more ironically, I always think of my love for Ice Cube and my appreciation for him as being an actor and all the great things that he's done. His huge list of accomplishments in the entertainment business. But really, I grew up in a barbershop myself, so it's funny how things work. It's funny how things kind of play out. Um, and again, for a young man who grew up in a barbershop, who answered phones, who swept up hair for a little bit of cash, right? My auntie was owned a hair salon for 30 years in the community, 25 plus years in the community. Everybody went to get their hair done by my aunt or my aunt's daughter or my godmother or any number of these people who are like extended family to me. And she had a barbershop that was connected, and I grew up in that barbershop. Um, and you get a real strong look at the community at a young age, and you start to understand how people think because you're coming into contact with adults in a more intimate situation, an intimate setting where they express things more than they would in other public places. And I used to love my auntie. I would help her fill up the vending machine. She had two vending machines, and we used to go to Sam's Club, and she would get the vending machine. She would get all of the stuff for the vending machines, and we'd come when the barbershop was closed, and I help her fill the vending machines and whatnot, and I'd take care of sweeping up the hair, answering phones, and because I was nephew, she would always come and during lunch or whatever, and open the vending machine up for me and give me a drink or get me something out of the vending machine, a honey bun or something like that. And those are just things that you remember for life, and they help shape you. And growing up in the barbershop helped shape me, and it taught me how to debate. It taught me how to talk. It taught me how to carry myself. It taught me how to interact with people at a young age, and built me for a time such as this. And I understand. I have an intimate understanding of how that barbershop dialogue is so easily weaponizable. Again, I mean, this is it's funny. It's like what 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 authorizes you? What credibility do you have? You'll hear the white liberals say this a lot. What credentials do you have to be able to speak on these things? What sociology degree do you have? What political science degree do you have? Well, I actually could have easily gotten those. I may still, in fact, go re-enroll to Iowa State this year to complete my degree because it's not really that hard to do. It's hard to get paid for, which is not a problem for me. I'm a part of a program that grants you the opportunity to have your school finished being paid for if you go pro early. But the cost of college education has certainly been inflated through a racket between the institutions and the corporatocracy and many other cooperating agencies across the country and in our society. But people ask all the time, what credentials do you have to speak? I'm speaking from real experience, right? And I tell these white liberals and I tell some of these bourgeois Negroes, like, you can talk that bullshit that you guys come together on in your Marxist university African American studies classes in some vacuum or in some hypothetical sort of philosophical and intellectual dialogue, whatever. Your little fucking safe spaces or whatever the fuck else you call them these days, right? Your little safe zones, your little scholastic safe zones, or they're just full blown circle jerks. You can talk about black issues from that vantage point, but when you talk to me, you're talking to somebody who actually lived there in the community. And there are people who lived in the neighborhood who weren't really in the community, right? There are people who lived in the neighborhood who had an address and a zip code that may have had all the elements to it, but they were never really in the community. They didn't play basketball in the community. They didn't ride their bike around in the streets in the community. They didn't spend time at the barbershop in the community. They didn't go, they didn't They didn't have family where they went to barbecues and spent time outside at the parks in the community. They didn't really spend time in the community like that. There are a lot of people out there who live in a community but never aren't really community people. I actually come from a community where my family is very, very prominent and heavy, he- um, very heavily involved in community things, right? Whether it was my Mexican grandmother organizing the biggest Mexican parish, Catholic parish on the west side of St. Paul, where you heard the great Kenny Maurer say that he was originally from hanging out there on the west side. And he talked about all his family, I mean his friends growing up being Mexican, because the west side of St. Paul is, one of the original hotspots of Mexican immigrants. My grandmother was one of those immigrants, and her daughter, my great grandmother was one of those immigrants, and my grandmother, her daughter, my great grandmother, was a first generation immigrant from Aguas Calientes, Mexico. And her father, my grandpa, Don Francisco, his wife was Crescentia, but Don Francisco, they helped found Our Lady of Guadalupe on the west side. And my grandfather was the honorary consulate to Mexico, and he helped families settle here in Mexico and send money back to their families when they worked, and so on and so forth. And my grandmother, this grandmother who I'm telling you about, who took me to all these movies and helped me help my mother out on the weekends, she also spent a lot of time there on the west side. Everybody loves the Mexican people. I mean, the Mexican people are great, right? The Mexican people just they're hardworking, they're family oriented, and they're just they have a beautiful culture. I mean, my Mexican family has a beautiful, beautiful culture, and it's heavily based on their faith in Christ. Okay, the Mexican Catholicism is serious, 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 serious. But my grandma, spent a lot of time on the West Side. She has a lot of Mexican friends as well from childhood. Um, and so, again, my family is heavily involved in the community. So I grew up in a way where not only did I spend a lot of time in the community through a person like my aunt who owned a community business, I also um, was always looked upon or spoken to with the respect that my family carried in the community. And my great grandfather, one of the best athletes to come out of the community, um, still has the batting average today, the record for batting average in St. Paul High School, in the St. Paul High School League, which he batted like 700 or something like that his senior year, 730 or something. Was somebody that they called on regularly when the Barnstormers would come to town. This is what would feed or become or help and aid the Negro Leagues. My great grandfather would play baseball through the barnstorming when he was young. But his brother, Uncle Rock, Eugene White, Uncle Rock was a boxing coach. He was a boxer, right? Funny how that would happen. That I would eventually get into MMA and love the sport of boxing, um, and didn't even really know Uncle Rock. Uncle Rock was dead before I was even born. But there are times when I've been in the community and people would come up to me and say, "I knew your Uncle Rock. He trained me in boxing." And now that I'm in MMA and I train in boxing all the time, I've had plenty of people come up to me now and say, "Boy, you don't even know how good of a boxing trainer and how good of a boxer your Uncle Rock was." Right. So, I mean, all of these people around me, whether it was my immediate family or my, you know, uh, you know, extended but very close relatives, were heavily involved in the community. So when I walked around as a child, when I was in the community, people spoke to me with a certain level of respect, and I appreciate my family for the legacy that they've left, and I hope to continue to contribute to it. But I will say, there's always a black sheep in the family, and as much respect as the people in my family have had, we have not had a significant impact on the politics of our community. We've helped people survive and grow and prosper and make ends meet in the community. We've helped people get through hard times in the community, but the bottom up grassroots awareness and understanding of the political scams that preside over us, we have not yet been able to crack. And that's my role. That's me being the black sheep. Is my role is to look at all of my family's work on multiple sides. You know, you got your mother and your mother's mother and their family. That was my Uncle Alfred, 33rd degree Mason in the 1930s. Scary, spooky shit. Um, let Huge legacy, left an incredible impact on the medical community across the entire world. I mean, doesn't get much bigger than the impact that my Uncle Alfred left on the world of dentistry and the rest of the medical community as a consequence. But you know, my mother's father's family, Black Rondo community, is a historic and iconic Black community that thrived before the city and the government decided to literally break the city apart by running an interstate through it. This is how industrialization killed the nation of shopkeepers, right? And that had a huge systemic impact on what were at a time thriving Black communities economically, culturally, and so forth. Black Wall Street, right? The Harlem Renaissance. There are places where Black communities were actually thriving, and I don't think it's a coincidence that those communities were sort of ripped apart through certain legislative policies. But they weren't alone. I mean, the nation of shopkeepers was strategically and systematically picked apart, no matter what race you are, right? But again, so you know, impactful family and the legacy they've left me to continue and for my children to eventually pick up the mantle and continue is something that I'm very proud of. When you hear me speak about my family and I go into detail, it's because I'm very proud of my identity and my heritage. And I think that people should know their identity, their heritage. I think they should be proud of it. Um, and I think if there's nothing significant in their family's history that they can really be proud of, then they should look to start that in their own family and build that legacy going forward. It's never too late. I benefited from coming from a family of people who were heavily involved in the community in any number of ways. But had I been the first one and I just come from, you know, average, you know, working every day, go to work, come home, stay with the family, and don't do much else, then maybe I needed to be the first one to do something impactful in the community. It's never too late to grow a set of principles. Proud of my family's work. But because of my family's work and because of how intimately I'm involved in the community, despite whatever these LGBTQ implant fucking activists say that come from some other state, and because they have black skin, walk around because they have black skin and talk about black skin as though it's the calling card of their heroism or their altruism or their humanitarianism. Um, Despite what those people say, some of us who actually come from the community are, you know, have an intimate knowledge that that is the only accreditation we need. I don't need any more accreditation than that. I come from the place that you're talking about. And not only do I come from the place, I was heavily involved in the place. I grew up in the place. I'm from the the they call it the mud in the black community. I'm from the mud. I'm from the bricks. I'm from the foundation of it. The memory of the way that things were done, the way that things were built, the way it went wrong lives in my DNA. That cultural memory. We talk about cultural memory. Nobody has that cultural memory more than the people that were there and the hands that were in the pot when the stew was being boiled. And my family certainly was. And those stories and those perspectives were passed down. And the one thing I can say is with all of the goodwill, with all of the good spirit, with all of the good intent that went into the contributions that many of my family members made to the community, it went into it with this sort of with this self-imposed barrier, right? With this sense that the system itself was so big that all we could do was affect the local. And maybe at their time, it was much harder to affect the global. But with this establishment, with this agenda's technology and their ambitions, they have opened the game up to affecting the global to all of us. All of us can now affect the global in a way that maybe our forebears never could have imagined. And that's an advantage for us. And with that, we have to start to look at things differently. And I think that's what Ice Cube began to do. But with all due respect, Ice Cube is in his 50s, okay? It's for young people like me and people younger than me. I'm 32. It's for people younger than me. You young ones out there, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20. If you don't have a legacy that you can point to and be proud of and let it be a compass or an anchor or a lightning rod for the way that you carry yourself and your behavior, then you be that new example for your child that will eventually come. If you're fortunate enough to have one, if you're fortunate enough to live to see it. If not, leave a legacy that you can be proud of. Leave a legacy other people can point to and say, this young person, this man, this woman, this person left an example that can be spoken about in the future with some sort of dignity and respect. And that's all Ice Cube tried to do. And the same barbershop that the same barbershop talk, the same barbershop culture that he first brought to the big screen and let the entire world see and be able to appreciate. And I think he did a damn good job of depicting how the barbershop culture works. That same barbershop community turned on him. Now Ice Cube is going on an Expose the Gatekeepers podcast tour because he has an axe to grind with people who he's been involved with who, for example, pull his movie rights because he didn't want to get the vaccine. Now we see how fucking wild that is, right? Remember when Ice Cube said, contract with Black America, then Ice Cube said, you know what? I'm not getting vaccinated to do this movie. At least that's what the story said. I didn't really confirm with Cube. We never talked about that particular one. I read about it. I read about it. I saw it. Didn't surprise me. Was certainly in alignment with everything else that was going on at the time. Apologize. My alarm's going off there. Um, so we never talked about it, right? But that is pretty much the story, right? He was on a movie set. He was supposed to do a movie. They mandated that people be vaccinated to be on the movie set. He didn't want to do it, so he, left that movie. And now we see that all the people who denied the vaccine, I mean, there's this kind of unspoken elephant. There's this elephant in the room right now. The nation is really divided into two groups of people. People who were three groups of people, but really two. People who said no to the vaccine and rejected it on face value. We don't trust the government. We don't trust big pharma. We don't trust our corporations. We don't trust none of you motherfuckers. So we're certainly not taking an untested brand new vaccine. We're not taking vaccines at all, much less this type of vaccine, right? Then there are people who just took the vaccine because, hey, just believe the science. Fuck it. And then there are people who were in the middle, who were pressured, who were coerced, who were treated unfairly, and sort of made to believe that they were doing their fellow men and women and children in the community a disservice and even physically harming them and putting them in danger if they didn't get vaccinated. So some of them reluctantly, regrettably, took the vaccine under that type of coercion and pressure. But now, I mean, the verdict's pretty much in, guys. The verdict's in. The vaccines were not effective. Okay. There's no evidence to show that the vaccine slowed down COVID. Certainly it didn't stop COVID as it was promoted by Rachel Maddow and the rest of the woke liberal media industrial complex. But there's no evidence to even show that it slowed the spread of COVID. And COVID is all but an afterthought. Now, are people still getting COVID? Yeah, I'm hearing about people that's still coming down with COVID. COVID will be with us forever. Let's get back to the origins of what happened with COVID. Not here, not now, but I'm just saying as a general principle, let's not forget about that. So again, Ice Cube says no to the vaccine, and ever since the contract with Black America, where he goes to both to Democrats and Republicans, to Donald Trump and Joe Biden, says, I want to negotiate what Black people are going to get for their vote to support you. Tries to broker a deal. The establishment has treated him differently. Now, he's going to go scorched earth against them. But I'm sort of going to go scorched earth against y'all. And when I say y'all for a reason, because I'm talking to Black America. A man who actually put his neck on the line to broker a fucking deal because most of y'all are too afraid. Most of y'all are too busy jerking off. Most of y'all are too busy getting high or whatever the fuck else it is you're doing. Most of y'all are too busy being busy with nothing that all of a sudden Ice Cube somehow becomes a sellout for trying to broker a deal to help y'all. You think Ice Cube needs to broker a big, you think Ice Cube needs to put his neck on the line to broker a deal that controversial at this moment in American history on behalf of the black people across this country? You think Ice Cube needs that? You think he's doing that for notoriety? You think Ice Cube's doing that to be seen, to be heard? Ice Cube don't need to do shit to be seen or be heard. Ice Cube rap tour. First of all, NWA is one of the biggest rap commercial products of all time. But Ice Cube going solo in his own right was one of, if not top five, rap music products of all time. Ice Cube sell out tours all across the country, all across the world. He doesn't need to broker a deal for y'all to be heard or be seen. And I'm not shilling for him because he owns the big three and I'm playing for it. There have been times when me and Cube disagree. I tell Cube to right straight up, hey, bruh, this is what it really is. I mean, let me tell you. And there have been times when we had those conversations. Still love them. We're it's family. We're gonna have disagreements. And I'm a little, please call me crazy. But I think Ice Cube now is starting to see that these gatekeepers who sort of hide, lay in the wings, and tell you that they support you or that they won't try and derail you. Now he's starting to see just how deep that rabbit hole goes and how far out of their way they will go to make sure a person like Ice Cube, who is as genuine and altruistic in his ambitions as you can possibly find, they'll go out of their way to derail him. And y'all are letting them do it. I mean, that's the real issue I have with it. You're letting them do it. When you don't just simply tune in to the big three and support the man, all of y'all talk about support black business, support this, support that. Where are you at if the big three comes to your city and you don't come to the first black owned sports league in America event? And that's how I know a lot of you posh, yuppie, omnisexual, cosmopolitan, black bourgeoisie sellouts ain't really about nothing that you're talking. And it's not even that I want to make it about race, because it don't need to be about race. This globalist agenda and scam is being waged on all of us. But the identity politics part of it is being waged in a very specific and targeted way. And for a lot of you black people out there who say pro-black this, pro-black that, you ain't supported a black initiative in your whole fucking life. The black initiative that you support is LGBTQ. And we don't have no problem with the LGBTQ, really, because whoever you're having sex with ain't really my business. Don't care. Not really interested in it. Y'all are making it a point to go around and talk about who you're having sex with. Don't you think that's kind of odd? I'm not up here telling you who I'm having sex with. None of your fucking business. None of anybody's business, really. And y'all really want to make Donald Trump or whoever else you get in the crosshairs, you really want to make their public image entirely about who they're having sex with. That's y'all's deal. We don't give a fuck. Or at least I'll speak on my own behalf. I don't give a fuck. I don't really give a fuck about who nobody's having sex with. Sorry. I don't care. It's immaterial to me. Okay. That's an LGBTQ specific thing, which is really a outgrowth of this radical feminist movement. And that's really a radical feminist thing, is let's create this sort of climate and environment of reputation tarnishment that you can do with very little proof. And that way we can undermine the rule of law and the rule of law and justice through uh, uh, shoddy and fast and loose allegations, right? Innocent until proven guilty. Now you're guilty until proven innocent because everybody wants to watch their reputation and protect any potential interest or credibility or brandability or marketability that the corporatocracy can give down to them from on high, right? You guys think you're fucking smart. You're not that smart. You just live in a society with a bunch of fucking sellouts. So Ice Cube refuses to sell out. He refuses to sell out. Everybody hates it. He wants to go to both parties simply and say, hey, what are black people going to get out of the deal? Incredible. Incredible moment in American history. It's really gone unheralded, to be quite honest. It's gone unheralded because he didn't ask y'all's permission. He didn't get a he didn't get he didn't get a market survey going. He didn't go to the NAACP and say, "Hey, NAACP, will you put together a poll for me and can we collaborate?" No, he didn't do any of that. Why? Because he knows the organizations that have been put there to pretend like they are fighting for your civil rights or your interest or the value of your citizenship, they're really in on the scam. Now, Q may not say that because he's a bit nicer than me, but I'll fucking say it. That's what he did. That's why he didn't come to work with any of you of these traditional mainstay groups of civil rights because they've been there for 30, 40 fucking years. And the black people still ain't getting nothing for their vote. And there's no real accountability for the Democrat Party in not delivering on the promises. Promises made, promises kept. And just to be fair, he went to both parties when really and truly he should have just went to Donald Trump and the Republicans said, what will you guys give? And this is my proposal, right? This was when I talked about reparations, no taxes, term limits as a platform for my Senate, my my run in politics, or my next run in politics, whether it be Congress again or Senate, maybe governor. I'm not sure yet. I'm not sure yet. But my next run in politics, I said this platform, reparations. But my reparations plan ain't we're going to start giving out cash and tax white people for being white. That's fucking loco. But what we will say is, you know, how can we start to leverage black people in this country um, and imbue them with a sense of national honor through increasing the value of their citizenship? Like fundamentally. How do you increase the value of your citizenship? One, from both sides, from a government political standpoint, how do you imbue a man to his nation? You give him a piece of it. Simple, right? It's really not hard. So for all these rhino RNC fucking Republicans or these genuine white supremacists out there who are acting like, oh, I don't know how we're gonna get this thing back. I don't know how we're gonna win. We're fucking doomed. They're in on it, okay? They're the controlled opposition. They're the outer bastion of New World Order. This is a very simple equation. The spirit of the elections matter. The way to change the spirit of the election is to change the spirit of the people who get tallied. And for those people who get tallied, who they may be cheating uh, with, the way to imbue them with national honor is to give them a piece of the nation, a genuine piece of the nation, not a social security number and a debt, a national debt that they then have to carry. That's not giving them a piece of the nation. That's not giving them a piece of the action. And for all you people out there who say that black people should just be happy that they're not still in Africa or they should go back to Africa, just go caucus with the fucking Democrats because you're Nazis. I mean, we know it. You're a fucking Nazi. Okay, go caucus with the other Nazis that are over there in Silicon Valley or in fucking San Francisco. Just go caucus with them. We don't need you. Go caucus with them. Go fuck yourself. Right. That's not the way to imbue a man with national honor, sacred honor. The way, and we have a crisis of national honor across the board, irrespective of race. But certainly within Black America, there's a real crisis of national honor. It's kind of like this net pessimism towards the American identity for Black people. And Ice Cube comes and he says, contract with Black America. And what he should have done, what he really should have done on principle, is just go to the Republicans and say, what will y'all give us to deliver this demographic and voter block across the country? Because the Democrats had 60 years and we're done with that. But out of fairness, he went to both sides. And in response, the Democrats are so arrogant, they're so narcissistic, they're so self-absorbed and egocentric. The mere fact that he would even bring a proposal was a sign of disrespect that was too much to take. And Joe Biden wouldn't even meet with him. He said, we'll talk to you about that after the election. Donald Trump did meet with him. Donald Trump pledged a bunch of money for certain initiatives. that would benefit black people. In addition to the HBCU money that he already put forward and a bunch of other things that he did, the general unemployment rate that was at an all-time low when he was in office for black people in the country and Hispanics as well. So on the economic side, Trump had things looking up for black folks, and he was willing to deal because he's willing to deal, right? In general, that's who he is. The proposal alone, the fact that Ice Cube would even venture off the platform far enough psychologically to think he was, well, I don't know, special enough to even bring a proposal was just a disrespect and a betrayal too much to bear for the entire Democrat Party. And as such, their mainstream media industrial complex collaborators aided and abetted in trying to go after Ice Cube as this cultural traitor. And y'all let him do it. And y'all let him do it. I saw the comments. I saw the comments. I saw it online. And really, to be quite honest, I read a few. I read the draft of the contract with Black America. Contributed some thoughts to it. Contributed a few thoughts to it. Um, the response that Ice Cube got really motivated me to go put my foot on the gas, right? Because it became clear that the problem is the gatekeepers, no doubt. Oh, they're corrupt as the day is long. This establishment is so corrupt. I mean, the corruption is so long. I mean, train smoke longer than that. I mean, yellow brick road shit. Okay, the corruption is so far and deep. It's scary, but it's all of us. And I saw the response to Ice Cube, and I just said, fuck these people. What sort of adulation do we really need from other people who can't, not they can't see the truth, but really just don't want to see the truth? I mean, you can't really see something if you don't want to. You can see it, but acknowledging it is a different thing. You can't really see it if you don't want to. And some people just don't want to see the truth. Now, hopefully, some of you out there listening today, and as we move forward, will slowly start to see the truth. And that's what Ice Cube aims to do. But give him the space to give him the space, give him the respect, give him the opportunity to convince you. At least have enough self-respect, at least have enough dignity, at least have enough pride. And I say that word with caution because it's one of the deadly sins, but at least have enough honor to be convinced. Be convinced that the establishment is corrupt. Be convinced like that a person like Ice Cube went out of his way to try and genuinely broker and a deal and fill a void or bridge a gap between the black people who have been manipulated, misled, misinformed, especially in any electoral and political consideration or sense or participation. At least allow him to be able to go out and broker that deal and bridge that gap without you talking shit on Twitter or in the barbershop or wherever the fuck else you get some brownie points for talking about the latest news thing that you don't know shit about. You just repeating some shit that somebody else heard or somebody else said that you heard somebody else say or that you read somebody else, you read something that somebody else wrote. At least have the self-respect to let the man convince you. If we can't start from a basis of that sort of self-respect, this country's doomed. This country's doomed. And I didn't even want to make this Ice Cube about I mean this episode about Ice Cube. It just happened organically. I just want to inform you guys and let you know Ice Cube might be coming on the show, but sometimes that's how conversations go. That's why I love having a podcast. And that's why I hope you appreciate the podcast that we're doing and continue to watch. Um, I had to say that about Cube because we live in a time where people where people want to start a new life. Uh, they want to just become whoever they want to become. Just on a moment's notice. And that's fine. Look, all of you are entitled to start over. At any time, you can start your life over now. The sins of your past you cannot outrun unless you repent and ask for forgiveness. That's my belief. Some others would believe in a sort of a karmic retribution that you can't outlive or outrun your karma. But either way, um, as far as the social aspect goes, you can start a new life if you want. You can start tomorrow and say, look, this job, this diet, the things I listen to, the things I watch, the people I hang out with, the people I spend time and commit my energy to. I'm changing all of that. That's great. But you can't rewrite the history. Stop trying to rewrite history. Stop trying to rewrite history. And I say this in respect to Ice Cube, and the whole thing is because we live in a time where people are going out of their way to try and rewrite history in a pursuit for whatever pipe dream of a life they believe they're going towards, or that they believe they're moving towards, aiming for. Don't rewrite the history. Just start your new life. Start your new life, right? And I said what I said about Ice Cube in real reverence because I respect what he's done. I admire what he's done. The Big Three is looking great. We had our first game in Chicago. I came out with the anti-war written on the side of my head. Stay tuned for next weekend. We play on CBS. We'll see if CBS actually shows what I write on my head or not. I don't know. I won't tell you what it is now, but pretty soon our store, The Last Renaissance, will be up and running, and you can buy the shirts from the I Flew Here series and the Big Three summer move situations on the lastrenaissance.com, a place in which my new podcast with AJ Barker and I together will launch as well once a week on the Last Renaissance YouTube channel. So we'll see what happens next week. I'm interested to see, but the reality is what Ice Cube is doing and what he has done has been nothing but out of genuine care for a group of people, a demographic of people, black people in this country who have been marched around on a dog leash by the Democrat Party and fed shit. I mean, they're not even feeding you dog food. They're feeding you shit and telling you it's gourmet. You're getting gourmet shit in your dog bowl. And you people are still gawking. I saw the fucking video of Mayor Jacob Fry here in Minneapolis out there at the neighborhood block party on Juneteenth, popping his fucking ass. You know, another great movie that Ice Cube was a part of, 21 Jump Street. He was in the movie. You know, I don't know. I brought the movie up because there's a scene in there where, where the one of the other high school undercover cops makes a joke at Jonah Hill and Channing Tatum for what she said was finger popping each other's assholes. It's fucking hilarious scene. It's classic. But yeah, that's Jacob Fry. That's who Jacob Fry is. I'm just gonna say it. It's because I don't really give a fuck. I'm not the one that's here to need to to really give a fuck. And I think increasingly you should stop giving a fuck. If people are gonna come and talk to you all polite and clean around the edges, they're full of shit. Just come on. Let's just say what it really is. Jacob Fry is a Finocchio. That's just what it is. He's a Finocchio. And it's not about his sexual orientation or his gender identity or any of that shit. He's just a fucking coward. He's a clown. And our political offices, our elected offices are riddled with them. Whether they come to Juneteenth and have the audacity to embarrass themselves and pop their ass in front of a bunch of women who ran them out of the fucking neighborhood 2 summers ago for the whole George Floyd deal, and then the Dante Wright thing and all this other stuff that popped off. Just ran his ass right off the block. He came down there to talk from on high like, hey, I'm Jacob Fry. I'm the great white knight or the great white hope, the great white liberal hope sent here to help you black imbeciles get a piece of the American dream. I'm here to broker the deal. I'm here to make sure that you get your justice. And those black women, to get your ass the fuck out of here, Jacob Fry. Get out of here. We don't want to hear that shit. And he fucking, with his fucking head down like a pussy, because he's a pussy, right? And, you know, if he had a point to make, he should have made it. I guarantee you nobody run me off no fucking block. I guarantee you when we come, how we come, ain't nobody gonna run me off no fucking block. I remember being in front of the Brooklyn Center Police Department after they shot and killed Dante Wright, and the police had the audacity to put a fucking fence up around the department and act like they're afraid. And this is another thing. This is another thing. All you conservatives out there acting like you're afraid of Antifa, don't get me wrong. The violence and the chaos and the mentality, furthermore, the psychology is all kinds of fucked up. And it's coming from the most anti-American sentiment possible. But you show that you're a real fucking pussy when you act like you're afraid of these people. Like, oh my goodness, chaos is going to ensue from Antifa. Now, is there a distinct difference between the way, and learn to separate the two. I'm going off track from Cube. I'll get back to him in a moment. Learn to separate the two. Yes, there was a clear and distinct difference in the way that COVID and the pandemic was adjudicated in terms of lockdowns and COVID misinformation, which actually came from the government and the mainstream media, in terms of saying, hey, when you have a MAGA rally, it doesn't spread COVID. When you have a BLM rally, when you have a MAGA rally, it spreads COVID. When you have a BLM rally, it doesn't spread COVID. That's fucking ridiculous. I can't even believe they try to run that, let alone I can't believe people believe it. Let alone I can't believe people believe that cloth masks actually stopped COVID from spreading. That was fucking ridiculous. People were scared. I get it. Easy to prey on people's fear. Learn to separate the two. To say that Antifa and BLM and all these other left-wing Marxist politics organizations are being weaponized against the value of American citizenship and the fundamental strength of our nation is valid. To act like you're actually afraid of these people is pussy. And I see it all the time. And I see it on Fox News. And the Fox News cucks are the rule of law cucks who will try and use BLM and Antifa and looters and shoplifters to justify a police state. And that's just what it is. I'm not afraid of no fucking pink-haired, purple-haired liberals. I'm not afraid of no black women talking about Black Trans Lives Matter or none of that shit. And I'm not afraid of their fucking beta male cuck boyfriends who are running behind them sniffing their asshole to get laid. Not afraid of them. Sorry. When I run into you, when I see you, I said what I said and I'm going to stand on it. Now, you can take it where you want to take it from there. Hopefully be nonviolent. I'll just say that. And if it's violent, well, hey, may the best man win. Hey, you lose some, you win some, you lose some. But you live to fight another day. A lot of times they don't want you to live to fight another day. Now, that's why the entire country the entire community went to gunshots. All a part of a plan, all a part of a plot. And the gun violence thing, you could even say, is really part of a plot to further desensitize Americans to the necessity of having guns. Everybody thinks it's the other way around, like the lack of gun laws is why we see gun violence in black communities. But usually the black communities that have the most gun violence are in places where the gun laws are the most strict. And you see that same theme on an international scale, because in Mexico, they have the strictest gun laws in the world. Some of the most strict gun laws in the world. There's only one gun store in the entire country of Mexico that's run and owned and controlled by the government, and they have more gun violence in Mexico than anywhere in the fucking world. Only people that have guns are the terrorists, the cartels, and the government, who by all metrics are probably measurably, uh, on record involved in the drug trade. And it's not so different here, is it? You still think that drugs are coming into the country through Mexico and the Mexican government without our government and our politicians, then you really don't know how fucking shit works. But anyway, I'm way off on a tangent. My point is, Jacob Fry's a fucking pussy. He's a pussy. And it just speaks volumes that the black community would now 2 years later, with this sort of amnesia-like mindset that we live in, be out there cheering Jacob Fry on as he pops his asshole, as he twerks in his fucking, in his fucking posh summer tennis shoes and his slacks, right? Fucking embarrassing. It's absolutely embarrassing. But y'all will support him, right? But you'll call Ice Cube a sellout. Right? As long as a posh, omnisexual, cosmopolitan, globalist, white guy from the Democrat Party shows up on your block and tells you that Juneteenth is important and twerks like your young, misguided, and misled girls do in the community, then he has your support. I mean, come the fuck on. And it's not just in Minneapolis. I mean, it's across the country. Stacey Abrams, are you fucking kidding me? AOC, Cory fucking Booker, Ilhan Omar, Kamala Harris, Jean-Pierre, Barack Obama. Look at these fucking people. Look at these fucking people that you throw your undying and unwavering support behind. Rashida Tlaib, all so that they can round your support up for Gavin Newsom, right? Because that's what they really want you to support. And Gavin Newsom is really Justin Trudeau, and Justin Trudeau is really Jacob Fry. In fact, if you put them all next to each other, they're like the same fucking guy. Posh, liberal, omnisexual, cosmopolitan, beta male, globalist, secular, anti-human elite. And somehow all these black crony politicians end up funneling you into an undying and unwavering support for Gavin Newsom, who now, after they impeached Joe Biden, who they still haven't asked to grad. This is how funny the establishment works. I'm just getting fucking rolling here. This is how funny the establishment works. They actually want you to believe that they ever liked Joe Biden. They never liked Joe Biden because he's a fucking Republican. And he's not really a Republican. I mean, he's a globalist. He's a self-serving globalist, obviously. He's an opportunist. He's a corrupt DC swamp creature is what the fuck he is. But when you go back and you listen to Joe Biden in the 70s, when you listen to Joe Biden in the 80s, when you listen to Joe Biden in the 90s, when you listen to Joe Biden in the 2000s, what you come to realize is he was the most conservative-leaning Democrat. I mean, he was a fucking Republican. Now, if he was a Republican, he'd surely be a rhino, okay? And that's how the thing works. He's a centrist. He's a uniparty shill is what he is. And at the time, it was advantageous for middle-aged white men running for office in a place like Pennsylvania to be Democrat in name, but be conservative-leaning in culture. That was advantage them. That's where the money was. That's where the juice was. That's where the fundraising power was, right? And so you have a bunch of them that were like that were like Joe Biden. But Joe Biden's really a fucking Republican. He's really a fucking rhino. I mean, when I say Republican, I don't mean America first. I don't mean MAGA. So you got to realize the Make America Great Again movement, the America First movement, the Trumpers, the populist movement, the nationalist populist movement. These people aren't Republicans. And I think it's very hard for black people to understand that. I think when you see Donald Trump or you hear the word Republicans or you see Steve Bannon and you think of Republicans, you think George Bush. George Bush is a fucking Democrat. And his dad was a fucking Democrat. And his dad worked for the CIA, and the CIA, Nixon and Kissinger, these people are fucking Democrats. I don't care what they write on their political, AARP cards. Or whatever the fuck wherever they write it down. I don't care what they write down, what they say they are. I'm telling you what they really are. And they've got you fooled. They don't like Joe Biden. They're going to impeach his ass. They're going to impeach. I don't even know if that's really Joe Biden up there. It might be a Manchurian candidate. I don't fucking know. I don't know. Doesn't seem like Joe Biden to me. If it is, it's a shell of himself. I mean, the man can barely complete a sentence. Let's just be real here. Well, what the fuck are we even talking about? What are we even talking about? Joe Biden's going to run for president again? The man can barely walk from the door to the steps in front of the White House. He can barely get from the door to the steps. He's going to be in charge of the nuclear codes when we're about to go to World War III with two nuclear superpowers. What the fuck are we even talking about here? Because he's good with diversity and equity and transgender rights? Are you people fucking stupid? Well, they're not that stupid. They're actually not that stupid. They're going to get his ass. They want him. They're going to impeach that ass. They're going to get Joe Biden right up out of there. And they're going to try and use Joe Biden to sort of create this counterbalance to the prosecution they're running on Trump. They're going to say, "Oh, no, no, no. We're being fair. We're being equal. We're going after Joe Biden with the same intensity, with the same, you know, with the same sort of interest that we're going after Donald Trump. Fair, equal prosecution. Nothing equal about it. Don't let them use that. It's bullshit. But they're going to get Joe Biden out of there. Joe Biden's going to concede. He can't run again. We all know that. I mean, the fact that he would even say it and that they would even consider it logical or reasonable shows you the lack of integrity. And if you can't look at Donald Trump and Joe Biden on face value and tell that one of them is actually still a player, one of them still playing with the full deck and the other one isn't, then you're a fucking liar. Then go to your bathroom tonight or wherever there's a mirror in your home, look yourself in the face and just say out loud, you are full of shit. Look yourself right in the mirror and tell yourself, you're full of shit. Anybody with half a brain can see that Joe Biden is leaps and bounds behind Donald Trump from a cognitive standpoint. Just a cognitive standpoint alone. Okay. So they're going to get Joe Biden out of the way. And who are they going to throw up there? Gavin Newsom. Woke California politics. And it's been a while since I've been with you, but I distinctly remember telling you all that eventually they were going to use CPS to go after parents who didn't affirm the genders of their children that they got from their woke Marxist LGBTQ cult ideology at public school. And sure enough, in California, Gavin Newsom, Pelosi, they passed legislation. I think it was like bills 596, 597, that says basically, in effect, your child can be taken from you. If you don't affirm your child's gender, your child can be taken from you, given autonomy to the children, given the autonomy. And what they're really doing here, let me show you how this is really, really, really dark. They're giving the autonomy of the nuclear family to the child. They're given the authority, the political authority, the political gavel of the nuclear family to the child. So if you make it out of the womb, out of the abortion mill, okay, the scientific and technocratic abortion mill, if you actually make it to be a living human, now we're going to throw the entire responsibility of the nuclear family onto your shoulders because you're bound to crash it in dramatic fashion, right? So now if you actually make it to live, we're gonna position you to be the pitfall of the nuclear family, of the nation of shopkeepers. This is satanic. Okay, this is a very satanic energy that we're witnessing. So they're gonna put Gavin Newsom up, and I just brought it up because how the fuck you come to throw your support behind a Gavin Newsom just blows my fucking mind. It really does. It really fucking does. How you can let a man stand up there with his hair fucking slicked back like that and tell a bunch of fucking lies, tell a bunch of fucking propaganda talking points from the establishment. I mean, right out of fucking Langley, right? Right out of some fucking government political elite think tank, right? About fucking climate change or whatever the fuck else, right? Climate when he's flying around on his private jet. One trip in his private jet is gonna, be the carbon emission of you for the whole year in your car. 10 times the carbon emission of one person's car in a whole year. And he's going to talk to you about electric and green energy and all it's meant to do. And again, all you people in California, I mean, some of you woke purple haired liberals are completely fine going to this ascetic, minimalist lifestyle where you live in a little fucking prison cell and you can taste each other's farts. When you live with your other hippie roommates that you get high with and vegan coke with and whatever else. Some of you are fine with that, but some of you have no fucking clue what's coming, and mostly it's you black people because by and large, when you look at the statistics, black people live some of the most consumer-based lifestyles in all of America. Consumer-based meaning that you like electricity, you like gas, you like being able to get in your car and go where you want to go. You like being able to, spend your money and spend your time the way that you want to, right? Which isn't wrong, which isn't wrong. But under these Democrat policies, you're in for a radical, radical change, a rude awakening. I don't think you guys understand what a 15-minute city is. That's in the contract that they have right now with you people in Black America. That's what you're going to get out of it. You're going to get a 15-minute city. And slowly but surely, you'll start to see the racism of a Gavin Newsom. Oh, they're gonna say they're gonna let you into all the places of power now. And they may let some people in to represent you, but how does it benefit you? I mean, what does it benefit you to get reparations in California when they're gonna crash the fucking currency? You sellout motherfuckers would you're so fucking dumb. Let's just call it what it is now. Black people, we just talking amongst us. You're so fucking dumb. You're gonna let the United States federal government work through a single state and their legislation to water down any claims of reparation by giving you cash payments on a currency that's collapsing because we're over leveraged now in the Ukraine with an unlimited debt ceiling? Are you people fucking stupid? Spit on the fucking floor. You people make me sick. Are you fucking dumb? You're going to let them give you cash reparations on a currency that's collapsing. And you're going to let them tell you, you're going to let the same people who are collapsing the currency tell you there's nothing wrong with the currency. Yeah, there's nothing wrong with the currency because they control it. But as soon as it's advantageous, do you think that they're going to let you pool why do you think they're giving you the fucking money? You think they're giving you the money to bolster the value of your citizenship? You think they're giving you the money to pull together to create some power base in America for black people that's based on sovereignty and self-governance, well-being? What establishment in government, what delusion are you living in? Of course they're not. Of course it's not. Of course it's not. They're giving you the money right now because the price of things has never been more inflated. And because the price of things has never been more inflated, it's not going to take any time for you to blow all of that money. Because they're still going to control who gets the loans for property, commercial property, residential property, so on and so forth. The Fed is still running things. And this is the point that I'm trying to make to you. Ice Cube understands this. I don't care how much money you have. If you have a loan, if you have a business, if you have a small business or you have a medium-sized business, a middle market business with a bank loan, you still work for the Fed. If you work for the Fed, you still work for the government. If you pay property taxes, your shit does not belong to you. It belongs to the government. And in times of a national emergency or a crisis, let's say a nuclear war or another pandemic, which are both surely on the way at this point, it's a foregone conclusion. We should assume that both are coming. In a pandemic or in a nuclear war, a national emergency, the dominion over the property of the United States of America is not up to you, the individual, especially not any of you new landowners who took your $200,000 and tried to pull it together and buy a little bit of land for some commercial real estate fucking deal. All of that shit's getting put on hold. Sorry, you had a 12-month window. You wanted to start a business. You can't. It's put on hold now. The ports are closed. We can't get fucking steel in we can't get steel in that we're getting from China. We can't get steel in because we're at war in Taiwan. Sorry, guys. And you're willing to buy this. I mean, come on, guys. Come the fuck on. How gullible can we be? Gavin Newsom doesn't even look like a real person. Doesn't even look like a real person. I mean, it looks like he goes to, Dr. Otzelberger on the weekends to get fucking pumper in his lips and in his fucking face. Doesn't even look like a real fucking person. But none of these people do. None of these people are real. And at a point, when you're Cube, or when you're a person like me, or you're Steve Bannon or Alex Jones, or somebody who's been out here saying this stuff for so long, you start to ask yourself, well, I mean, maybe people just don't want real people representing them. Maybe people have become okay and invested in the corrupt status quo because of how it lets them justify their own little piece of the corrupt pie, however little that piece may be. And what I hope you're inspired by Ice Cube to do is to say, hey, it's never too late to grow a set of principles. It's never too late to stake a flag and say, you know what? Enough is enough. Enough is enough. It's time to fight back. It's time to get clear. It's time to repent. It's time to repair. It's time to actually take a stand for yourself. You know, this ain't about the nation. This ain't about the church. This ain't about God. God's going to be all right. Jesus Christ is going to be all right. They don't need you. Okay. The earth is going to be fine. It don't need us. And the only thing that's really going to happen from anything with having to do with the climate is that the people may fuck the earth up for themselves. You're not going to fuck the earth up for the earth. The earth is pretty fucking resilient. Okay. I mean, that's how arrogant. I mean, that's how arrogant these liberals are. The climate racket is really probably the biggest denial of God that there is. Because the arrogance of it is like, um, we're gonna mess the planet up, and that will be it. That's it. It'll be over. You think that God won't start over? If you nitwits, the only way they're really gonna fuck the planet up is through an all-out nuclear war, a nuclear winter, where the fucking nuclear debris kicks up in the air and creates a thin layer of light reflective material that causes the earth to cool. That'll be where the climate change really starts to kick in. That's when you'll see shit start to get wild in terms of the climate. Oh, the summers are getting hotter. Yeah. In your 100-year meteorology lifetime records, the summers are getting hotter. Not across the not across any of the ice any of the ice measuring or things like that across time. There's been times when the planet was hotter than it is now. I mean, what are we even talking about? It's a fucking racket. But again, if you'll believe it, I guess. I guess. Right? I mean, I guess so. But I would like to believe that there are a lot of people out there who see this, who hear this, who listen to the podcast, who watch the podcast, who listen to the large number of people who are trying their very best to tell the truth in a time where the truth is somewhat hard to come by. It's my hope that all of you out there can see through the scam and support the people who want to stand up for you. Stand up for yourself. This is not about me. It's not about Ice Cube. It's not about the big three. It's not about the Republican Party. It's not about Donald Trump. It's not about any of that. Stand up for yourself because this establishment means to limit your freedom of movement. They mean to limit your freedom of representation, and they mean to limit your freedom of economy. Those are the three sort of pillars that make up what it means to be a sovereign citizen: freedom of movement, freedom of representation, and freedom of economy. That's what the establishment means to take from you now. Stand up for yourself. It's not even hard. Don't fucking vote Democrat. Come on. Don't vote Democrat and don't vote for these Democratic rhinos either. Come on. We know who the real hitter is. We know who they're afraid of. It's not hard. It's not hard to see. It's not hard to see who they're afraid of. We can see it. Man walks through the hallway, you guys take cover, you run and duck into your classrooms. It's just like being in high school or junior high. It's just like being on the block and seeing Debo, to tie it back to the movie reference. We know who Debo is of the political field. We know who Debo is in D.C. We know who everybody's afraid of. He comes around, everybody's tucking their chains. We know who that is. That's Big Donald Trump, 2024. It's not, I mean, come on, look at what they're doing. Look how far they're going out of their way to take the man out. We know who the corrupt status quo is. We know who represents the corrupt status quo. Gavin Newsom doesn't get any more corrupt and status quo than that. Climate science, climate change, climate equality. Are you guys fucking kidding me? You're going to ship all your pollution to China? We got one planet, one world to save. But the great people in the great country of the United States of America are going to transport all of their pollution through manufacturing to the great China Republic, the CCP, the Communist Chinese Party, of which we have no real regulation on the output of pollution, and we have no real working relationship with them whatsoever that guarantees any honest transparency on any of their government dealings, particularly and increasingly as we move towards an all-out kinetic war in the South China Sea over a place like Taiwan and Guam and all these other, Japan, South Korea, Vietnam, so on and so forth. We're on our way to war with the Chinese right now. And we're going to be able to trust them to be transparent about how they are dealing with pollution. This has been another episode of Please Call Me Crazy, brought to you by Free People Radio and now powered by our first sponsor, TireGet.com. That's TireGet.com. You all have to buy tires from somebody. You might as well buy them from us and help fund the movement, help support the movement. We believe in the freedom of movement, and that's exactly what the establishment wants to take from you. Now, I'm your host, Royce White, in the belly of the beast, Minneapolis, Minnesota, signing off. Again, stand up for yourself. Stand up for you. If nothing else, know that you are, in fact, being fucked over as we speak. Prepare to stand up for yourself. Go listen to some people, find some information that equips you to stand up and make an informed decision about how you participate and how you're going to protect the value of your citizenship, the value of your citizenship, your freedoms and rights, because they are under full-fledged attack. Shout out to the great Ice Cube. We love you. We support you in all of the great work that you've done and continue to do. Everything you've contributed to this nation, everything you've contributed to Black America, and everything you continue to try and fight for on behalf of Black America and citizens all across the country. We thank you. We appreciate you. We look forward to another great weekend in the Big Three this Saturday. Tune in at 1 p.m. Eastern on CBS to see yours truly take on Tri-State with my team, The Power, myself, Katino Mobley, Glenn Rice Jr., TJ Klein, Akil Mitchell, and the great and wonderful Nancy Lieberman, as we try and look to go be victorious again in the city of Dallas and advance to 2-0 in a very short 8-game regular season with 2 playoff games. Every game counts. Every week counts. Many teams have been either in or out of the playoffs by 1 game. Sometimes it's come down to a point differential. So every game counts. If you haven't tuned in, tune in this weekend. I'm in great shape. I'm in great form. I'm in great spirits. We're in the great city of Dallas, where the man John F. Kennedy himself was assassinated. So you know my political statement this weekend is going to be nothing short of straight to the bone truth in honor of that historic place. I want to send my prayers and thoughts to Donald Trump and his family. I want to send my prayers and thoughts to all of you and your families out there as you navigate the corruption of the time we live in. Put on the full armor of God. Stay prayed up. Stay faithful. Stay together. Stand up for yourself. The fight continues. Don't die a jerk off. Godspeed.